Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ellie. Today's video is going to be my June reading wrap up. So I think this is probably the best month I've had this year in terms of how many books I managed to read. I read a total of 15 books this month, which included 3 ebooks and the rest were all physical books, and I don't want to make this video super long, so I'm going to start off by talking about the 3 ebooks that I read. The first one was Dead Man Walking by Gianna Darling. This is book 6 in the Fallen Men series, and these books can be read as standalones, I believe. That's how I've done it anyway. I haven't read any of the other books in this series, but from reading this one I do want to try the rest of the books. I've heard a lot of great things about this author and a lot of her books recommended, and this is the first one that I've ever picked up. The Fallen Men series is following a motorcycle club, and this kind of has the good girl bad guy kind of vibe. So the female main character, I cannot remember their names off the top of my head, but she at the start of the book is kind of a church going good girl, and she has a crush on, I believe his name is Priest, the male main character, and he is the complete opposite. He's a killer and he doesn't want to get involved with her because he doesn't want to corrupt her or anything. This book has some spice in it, and overall I think I would probably rate it maybe a 3.5 out of 5. It wasn't the best motorcycle club book that I've ever read. However, I'm definitely going to check out the rest of that series. Then the second ebook I read was All Roads Lead to Here by Mariana Zapata. I think that's how you say their name. So I finished this book whilst I was on holiday, and it actually took me quite a while to get through this book. I think it's nearly 500 odd pages, and I feel the book definitely didn't need to be that long. It just was very slow paced, and it is a slow burn, which I didn't know going into it, and I personally I'm not the biggest fan of slow burns. Literally nothing happened between the 2 main characters until it was like 80% through the book. So if you love slow burns, I really think you would love this book. But for me personally, I just found myself getting quite bored with it because it was so long and not much was really happening between the 2 characters, but I did like their interactions and their relationship. It's set in a small town. I read a few of this author's books before now, and it's not my least favourite by her, but it's not my favourite by her either, so it's kind of like in the middle. And again, I'd say probably 3 out of 5 stars. And then the final ebook I read, I actually finished reading yesterday, and that was Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas, and this is my favourite of all the ebooks that I read this month, and it's the second book that I've ever read by Penelope Douglas, and I absolutely loved it. So in this one we're following Ryan and Misha. They were paired up as pen pals when they were in 5th grade, but once the project kind of ended, they continued to write to each other. In the book, they are seniors. It's the last few weeks of their senior year, so they're both 18, and Misha stops writing to Ryan, and later on in the book you find out why. And one of their deals is that they're never gonna search up each other on social media or try and find each other. They just want it to stay anonymous because they can be their true selves when writing to this other person, because they've grown up together but don't actually know who they are. But then they end up meeting. There's a lot of twists within the story. I didn't see a lot of it coming, and it kept me gripped, and this was a spicy book again as well. And I think my overall rating will probably be 4.5 out of 5. So now I'm going to move on to the physical books that I read this month. I think it's going to be easier to wrap these up because it's not all from memory because they're in front of me. So the first physical book I read, and the first few of these physical books I read as part of the Dessertathon. I did vlog taking part in the Dessertathon, which I think all of those will be up by the time this goes up. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because I did speak on my opinions about these books during the vlog, so if you want to hear my opinions on those, then I'll try and leave the links to those down below. So the first book I read for it was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This was a reread for me. This has always been one of my favourite books, although one comment that I do have from this time rereading it is the way the book ends. You have to have a riot and there has to be criminal damages and things like that to be able to get people to listen to you, when that really shouldn't have to be the case. But overall, I love this book. Angie Thomas is one of my favourite authors. Then the second book, which was also part of the Dessertathon and was also a reread, was To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. Again, before, I think I probably rated this a 5 stars. After this reread, I think I would probably drop it down to 4 out of 5 stars, simply because I'm a bit older now. But this book is about Laura Jean, and she writes letters to all of the boys that she has ever been in love with, and one day her letters all get posted out, and she has to deal with all of these boys reading what she wrote to them. And Peter, who receives one of her letters, they decide to fake date so that he can get back at his ex. I really love the story. I love the movie adaptations of this series as well, and I found that Peter in the book was quite different to Peter in the movies, and I never really remembered it being that much big of a difference. Like, I didn't really like book Peter, but I really like movie Peter, so that was interesting. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this whole series. I think maybe later in the year I'm gonna reread the rest of the series to see how they compare. Then I read the X Hex by Erin Sterling. This book overall, I think I gave it a 3, possibly a 4 out of 5 stars. So this follows Vivi. She is a witch and she didn't believe in hexes. She thought she was just having a bit of fun when she and her cousin hexed her ex Reese for breaking her heart. 9 years later, he returns to their town and it turns out the curse that they put on him was real. Hex then kind of seeps out into the town and starts meddling with the town itself. This book I had really high expectations for. I'd seen it a lot all over the internet, but it just fell a little bit flat for me. I don't know if it's because it was really overhyped. I went in with really high expectations, but I just felt, although there were some kind of spicy scenes in this, the scenes that weren't the spicy scenes kind of felt that they were very YA written. And this is obviously an adult romance book, and I just feel that kind of maybe more could have happened. I was expecting more to happen on the hex side, but the kind of magic that happened to the town in the book wasn't the kind of thing that I imagined. I thought it would be a bit more dramatic than what it actually was. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I would definitely recommend it if you haven't read it already. I just think I expected a little too much going into it. Then I read Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This book I was really excited to get around to reading. I have seen so many good reviews about this book, this series, and this author. I think this was my second favourite book of the Dessertathon. I think I'm definitely going to reread this again before the end of the year. I just really enjoyed this one, and I really want to get the rest of this series. So this is a mafia romance. In this book we follow Callum and Ada, I think that's how you say her name, I'm not sure, but they are from mafia rival families. They are forced into marriage to help with their mafia relations, and again, I didn't really think I was one who was into the marriage of convenience trope, but I really enjoyed it in this book, and I love how strong Ada was. I'm pretty sure I read this within a day, if not it was definitely within like a day and a half. I just flew through it because I was enjoying it so much. Then I read what is probably the most hyped book on BookTube and BookTok, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book I think I rated 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. I just thought it was a little bit overhyped, maybe because it was so hyped up. I had, again, like with the X Hex, because it was so hyped up, I went in with really high expectations, but I did enjoy it. I just felt like it was very overhyped. So in this book we follow Olive and Adam, and throughout the story they fake date. There were some things that happened in it with one of Adam's friends that I was not expecting, and I thought that Olive's best friend might have known they were fake dating and just kind of pretended she didn't throughout the story. But I really liked all the characters in this. Again, I did kind of fly through this. I think I might have read this within 2 days, and I finished this one whilst I was on holiday as well. Then I read one of my favourite books of the year and my favourite book of the Dessertathon, and that was Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. I read this within a day. I was sat on the beach, which totally matches the cover of this. This book follows Mackenzie and Cooper. Cooper lives in this small seaside town which has a college which is essentially just full of rich kids, and Cooper and his friends that have all grown up in this town really begrudge the rich kids and they hate all of them just on principle. And one night this guy goes into the bar where Cooper's working at and they get into a fight, which then causes Cooper to lose his job. So then, to get revenge on the guy who lost Cooper his job, they decide to make his relationship suffer. So Mackenzie is the guy's girlfriend, and Cooper kind of sets out to destroy their relationship to get back at him, because he just assumes Mackenzie is some snobby rich girl and it's not going to affect him. But it turns out that isn't Mackenzie. She's the complete opposite of that, and they start hanging out, and he kind of wants to put aside the deal and give up on it because he realizes that she doesn't deserve this, but his friends push him in to just keep going with it. And I just really love this story. I love the setting, I love the characters. definite 5 out of 5 stars and would recommend this to everyone. Then the final book of the Dessertathon, I read Shatter Me by Tahira Murphy. This is the first book in, I believe it's just called the Shatter Me series. This book we follow Juliet, and she has been locked away after she had an incident, and after many years she is suddenly released because the re-establishment are kind of taking over and they want to make this new world. One of the leaders of the establishment, Warner, thinks that he can use Juliet as a weapon in taking over and starting up this new world. So she is released from where she is being held and is then taken into this new world where she's told she can have whatever she desires. Suddenly she's not locked up in this cell, not knowing when she's going to eat or shower, to having as much food as she wants and her own bedroom with a shower. I'm left with quite a few questions after this first book. Some of them as I was reading them were answered, but I'm still left with a few. But I do own the rest of the series, so I'm hoping that as I go on, the rest of the questions that I have are going to be answered. Again, this is really hyped up online and I did enjoy it. I just think it might make some more sense when I read more of the book. So once I finished the Dessertathon, I took one more book with me on holiday, and that was The Simple World by K.A. Tucker. This is a small town romance set in Alaska. In this story we follow Kala. So she lives in Canada with her mum and stepdad, and she gets a phone call to say that her dad is sick and she should fly to see him in Alaska because they don't know how long he has left. So she thinks she's just going to go over there for 2 weeks and see him and then head back home. But she flies over there. She doesn't like Alaska at first. Her dad owns a plane company. Her first interaction with one of the employees is Jonah, and they just do not hit it off at first. It's a real instant kind of hate thing. Slowly get to know each other throughout the book, and it was really sad towards the end. I just kind of loved the whole vibe of this book and I really like this. I think I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Then I read The Vampire Diaries, Stefan's Diaries Volume 6, The Compelled by LJ Smith. This one I just picked up because I was waiting for a book to come in the post and I didn't want to kind of have a few days off reading, so I just picked up something that I could get through quickly. So the Vampire Diaries books, I do collect them, as you can probably see behind. I don't necessarily read them in order, and I think I've read a few of the Stefan's Diaries ones, but I've definitely not read all of them. In this one we have Damon and Stefan. There is an evil vampire called Samuel, and at the start of the book he has taken Damon and he's trying to become this all-powerful vampire. Basically, Damon and Stefan are trying to stop him. There are some witches in this. There's also a human that's going around with Damon and Stefan as well. It wasn't my favourite Vampire Diaries book, so I'm probably going to give this like a 3 out of 5. Then I read 2 books from the same series. So they are Zodiac Academy. So I read The Awakening and Ruthless Faye. So The Awakening, this was a book club pick. Me and my best friend have started our own little book club, so we decided to read this one as our second ever pick, and she absolutely loved this story. It's like her new favourite series and I really enjoyed it, and I do want to say I can 100% see why some people hate this book, but at the same time I really enjoyed it. I tabbed this book. It's the first book I've ever tabbed actually, and it kind of made me want to tab the rest of my book. But the Zodiac Academy is kind of like Hogwarts for people that can do magic, but they're called Faye, and instead of being like school children age, they're American college age, so they're like 18 to 21 I believe. But in this book we follow Darcy and Tori, and out of the blue they are suddenly told that they are the heirs to the kingdom in Solaria, as their parents were king and queen, and they are taken to this magical world and are told they are going to attend the Zodiac Academy. And they get there and immediately everyone hates them, and people are trying to get them to leave because they don't want them there. And I think I might make a video separately about Zodiac Academy. I might get my friend to see if she wants to be in the video as well, just because she loves it so much. But I read this one. I think I would give this a 4.5, and then as soon as we finished that one, we both ordered the second one, Ruthless Faye. We didn't read this as part of our book club. Yesterday I ordered the 3rd book in the series. She is already reading that one. She is speeding through the series. This one I didn't enjoy as much as the first one. It still follows the same storyline. Basically the book kind of ends and then the next one starts as if it's the same day or the next day. This one is just a bit more of a build up. So the third book is, I believe, where they're tested to see if they can stay at the academy, if they're powerful enough. So this book is just kind of building up to that, introduced to pitball at the end of the book, which is their sport in this world. And there's just kind of too much to go into with the series in a wrap up, which is why I'm thinking I might make a separate Zodiac Academy video. I think this one I would probably give 4 stars, maybe 3.5. I did like it, just not as much as the first one. We're getting there. So the second to last book I read was Two Summers by Amy Friedman. This book is following Summer. There are 2 different stories being told at the same time. So Summer lives with her mum in New York and her dad lives in France, and when she's at the airport she receives a phone call. So one of the stories in this book follows her answering that phone call, the other one follows her not answering that phone call. And the one that she doesn't answer the phone call, she gets on the plane to Paris to spend the summer with her dad. When she arrives, her dad isn't there, and it turns out he was calling her to say, don't come because I'm not there. Her dad's an artist and she assumes the other people living in the house are just artists that are living there as well, like a house share. And she meets this boy in the French cafe and she thinks it's going to be like her summer of love maybe. And then in the other universe, she answers the phone and receives the call to say not to come. So she goes back home and spends her summer in her hometown doing a photography course at her local college, which is run by her aunt. So that was a big twist at the end of this, which I was not expecting. And I think this is like a good YA summer read. I just felt it was a little bit young for me now. Overall enjoyed it. I think I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. And then the final book, I just sneaked in a little one, which is Killjoy by Holly Jackson. It's only a short one. There was about 93 pages in the story itself. So this book is part of the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, so this is book 0.5. It doesn't actually have anything to do with that series as such, although the ending of this book ties into the Good Girls Guide to Murder book. In this, we follow Pip and her friends, and they are at a murder mystery party that one of her friends has put on. So they're all undertaking roles as different characters, and throughout the night things happen and they have to try and solve the murder. And this dinner party inspires Pip to look into the murder, and which starts A Good Girl's Guide to Murder as a series. So this was a fun little read. If you like that series, I would definitely recommend reading this one, and I think I'd probably give this like a 4 out of 5 stars. So they were all of the books that I read this month. I tried to get through that as quick as I can. I can see I have already been filming for 30 minutes, so I'm going to try and cut this down a little bit. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these books, then please let me know what you thought of them, or if you have any recommendations, then let me know. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week.